Hello, my name is Larry Smota, and for this data science in context presentation, I am going to talk about geographical information systems that are also known as a GSI. Among the main objectives of this presentation is to introduce the GSI, and since this is a short presentation, I am just going to cover what is a GSI, what are the models and the data type of a geographical information system, and some of the application of a GSI. So, what is a GSI? A GSI is an organized collection of computer hardware, software, and geographical data that is managed by people. The people use this information in order to perform analytics in geographical referenced information. In this kind of system, all the components work together in order to provide the insights that we want about the data. In this case, the people use the hardware that can be a phone, a satellite, a plane, or any other device that you use in order to capture information about a real world object, and then that information is used as an input in a database that could be called the software, and then people manage that data in order to perform analytics. And the kind of analytics that we can perform in such data is the same that we use in any statistical analysis. So I mentioned that we can perform analysis, but how a geographical information system manages the information? In a geographical information system, the information is managed in models. And with models, it means that each representation of a real world object is divided in databases, where an object is used to represent the type of information of a certain geographic feature. For instance, as we can see in this graph, we can have the street database that could be a representation of all the information related to the street of a specific city or place in the world. Also, we can have another database that could be the building database that would be related to the street database that is going to represent all the buildings or any other structure that was built by the man. And finally, we can have another database that could be the vegetation database that can be used in order to model objects that are found in nature. This is just an example of the few databases that you can create, so you can have as many databases as you want, and in the end, all the layers can be combined in order to create an integrated database. The advantage of this approach is that you can use the information in different layers, and therefore you can perform analysis in any specific object that you want. And that's one of the most important advantages of a GSI. However, once we have the database created, how does a geographical information system manage the data? In order to do that, it uses the spatial data that describes the absolute and relative location of a geographical feature. And also, it uses the attribute data that is used to describe the characteristics of a real world object that we model in the database. The spatial data is divided in two categories, or I could say two main data types that are used in order to model real world objects. And one of those is the vector mode or coordinate based mode. For this kind of data structure, the three objects that are used in order to model real world objects are points, lines, and polygons, which are also called features. And at the same time, those objects are located using x and y coordinates, or sometimes even as z coordinates. An example of that could be the longitude and latitude. That is actually the representation of a x and y coordinate. And another feature of vectors is that the information is independent of other vectors but are also related to other vectors. So I'm going to provide an example in the next slide. In this case, for instance, the nodes can be the representation of any real world object. That could be, for instance, a pipe, a building, or even a car in a street. For that kind of representation, the objects are represented with points. When the points, let's say point 1, we have an x and a y coordinate. In this case, this is a two-dimensional representation of an object in the world, and those objects can have an attributes such as the depth or the amount. In this case, this is using the example of a piping system where the point or the node could be any specific spot in a pipe, and one or two attributes that that spot can have are the depth and the amount of water that that pipe can handle. In addition, another type of object that is used in order to connect or to delimit the geographical area of a spot are the lines, as you can see there. The line, in the same way that a graph database can store relationships between objects. For instance, as you can see here, for instance, you can connect a few data points with a line, in this case, for instance, line A, and you can specify the nodes that are used in order to connect such data points. In this case, it's using the node 1 and the node 3 in order to connect the points. And in the same way, you can specify attributes such as the flow or the capacity. In this case, again, it is using the example of a piping system where you can specify what kind of relationship those attributes have. And in this case, that line is representing the flow of water and the actual capacity of that pipe. And finally, if you want to delimit a specific geographical area, you can combine the objects as a polygon that represents the complete geographical space of any real world object. In this case, as you can see, any node 1, 2, or 3, can be grouped in one polygon, and that polygon can have any specific attribute that we want, such as the area or the population. Using this type of structure is how a geographical information system models the real world objects. And in the same way, that polygon, once created, for instance, the polygon A, that is a combination of many nodes and lines, can store information in a relational database, just in the same way that we can see here. However, that's not the only data type that we can use in a geographical information system. We can also use the raster mode or grid setter mode. That is basically a mode where all the information in the real world is modeled using rows and columns that you can call also pixels. And the main difference compared to the vector mode is that the information is stored actually in each of the cells that you can see in the screen, and those cells can have an attribute such as the x and y coordinate or any other specific information about that specific place. For instance, it has the lands used, the density, and the crime rate in this case. As you can see, all the real world objects are defined in pixels and finally represented in the database. Finally, there is another data model that is that I didn't include in the slides. That is the image data type. That is basically any real world image that we take and we give as an input in the database. But that data type is mostly used in order to to use it as a layer for the other geographical objects, just in the same way that you can see any information in the Google map. And finally, what are the applications of a geographical information system? For instance, people working in different fields use the geographical information systems as a technology in order to perform scientific investigations, management, and development and planning. For instance, retail and businesses and marketing companies can use GSIs in order to determine where to locate a new store or even where to open any other kind of entities, such as a restaurant or a place that is managed in partnership, or any other uh, information of their interest. Scientists also use the GSI in order to compare the population statistics to resources such as drinking water, or even the biologists can use it as a way to track animal immigration patterns, or simply in order to model the certain habitats for different animals. For instance, also the government can use the GSI in order to create a response for natural disasters such as earthquakes and hurricanes, because they can actually analyze the information and predict or model where would be the most secure places for the people when such phenomena are happening. And finally, the engineers can use a geographical information system in order to design and implement communication networks that could be of any type, such as a phone line, an electrical line, or even an internet connection. The main point is that the geographical information system is used in order to have a geographical representation of the place, and they can take decisions based on the attributes that that specific location has. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I hope you like it. I will try to be available on the chat if you have any question. And thank you for your attention.